Welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about living substance free, and that is completely substance free. As of recently, I have not been using any substance in order to, smoke or just ingest or use in general. I have completely detached from any sort of substance use, and this is what I have come to find. This is what I have realized what it's about: living substance free when it comes to mentally, living substance free when it comes to physically, living substance free when it comes to emotionally and spiritually. So thank you for being here, and today we're going to be discussing this, starting off with mentally. Living substance free is a very mentally freeing It has a very mentally freeing aspect to it. You have no, let's say, stress when it comes to mentally, because you're not constantly reminded of continuously doing the same actions over and over again. No longer are you mentally dependent on substances to, let's say, mentally think. You're no longer dependent on substances to mentally get by. You're no longer dependent on substances to exist any whatsoever when it comes to mentally. Mentally, you have that sense of freedom to be able to just exist in the present moment and to exist without any vices and to exist without any substance use. And when it comes to mentally, that freedom that you do get from living substance free, you can use that in the mental state of being to, like I've talked about before, apply your mental state of being into other things that are more beneficial to you. Whereas before, you may have been using, let's say, a substance in order to just feel a certain way, in order to just get by, or maybe help the way that you think, maybe take away some sort of mental stress that you had. Whereas now, you're really just mentally in the present moment, and you're not, let's say, bounded to anything specifically. You have that mental sense of freedom, and you have that mental ability to do whatever it is that you need to do. Now, in terms of things that are going to benefit you, thinking in ways that will benefit you, thinking in ways that are not going to hold you back, thinking in ways that are not going to have you stagnant and or docile. And to be able to be substance free, your mental state of being will continuously get stronger and stronger throughout the experiences that you have, because you're no longer depending on something. You're no longer mentally bound to, let's say, a substance, bound to a specific pattern of substance use, whereas before you were depending on that in order to, let's say, get by when it comes to mentally, just exist when it comes to mentally. Nowadays, and now, you don't have to have that mental vice. You don't need that mental vice, and now you can use that mental energy, that power that you have mentally, and apply it into things, like I said, that are going to be more beneficial to you. That's what I've been realizing when I've gone substance free, is that mentally I have this sense of clarity that everything is always all right, and that I'm not doing things that are going to end up hurting or hindering my growth as an individual. And this journey that we're on is almost more clear, the path that I'm on when it comes to being able to mentally perceive that path and being able to mentally get through things, persevere when it comes to mentally, has definitely improved when I'm in my own mental state of being, when it's not being influenced by a substance. Nowadays, when I have that mental sense of stress, I'm able to just deal with it with my mental state of being. I'm not needing to depend on anything else to, let's say, get over that mental stress with a substance or with a, let's say, negative action or whatever that may be that you may be attached to. Detaching from that is going to give you that sense of mental freedom in order to exist how you would like to. And like I said, it's a mentally freeing action. For most people, they need a vice. Most people need something to do, and they're going to end up mentally, validating it. Mentally, mentally making it seem like it's okay. Mentally, like I said, validating that action because of they think this certain way, about it. When at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need that. You're just using it. You could be using it as a crutch. Of course, there are circumstances where people perceive that they really do need something, and that's in the mental state of being where you clearly think that this is you and that you can't necessarily detach from that because you are not in your power mentally. You are not stable when it comes to mentally, and achieving that mental stability, achieving that mental sense of freedom can be found, and that space can be found and reached through at least existing substance free. And mentally, it gives you the ideas of, when you're living substance free, of how best you can now implement moderation if you need to do so. How best can you now go to use something if you really see it as something that is justified, rather than just mentally justifying it because it makes you feel good, rather than just mentally justifying it because, oh, you perceive that mentally you think better, mentally you have better thoughts when you're on that substance. That may be what you perceive it as, but is that right for your other states of being? Is that right for you as a being to be subscribed to that way of thinking when it comes to mentally? And physically living substance free, of course, it's freeing because physically you're not going through that physical action with that substance anymore. You're detached from that substance when it comes to physically, and you're unbounded from that substance. I've made a video before talking about how unbounded and being unbounded, and not only can it help the mental state of being, but the physical state of being is improved when you're living substance free, because you're not, let's say, your body is now detaching. Ever since the process of you going without, your body is detaching from that substance. It's getting rid of any traces amount of substance that are in your body, and you're now able to see, okay, physically, I have a better perspective. I have a better way to view the way that I'm going to move forward in the past in the future, from the past into the future, with the knowledge and with the perspective of, this is how I want to treat my physical state of being. This is how I want to go by my physical actions. These are the actions that I'm okay with. And going without something, like I said, with mentally, the same thing with physically, it is very freeing. You have that sense of freedom from that substance with that physical state of being. And then now that newfound perspective of, it doesn't matter as much, and I can choose when I want to do this. I'm just going to be more aware of, and if that's right for you, there's some people that aren't necessarily aimed towards benefiting their physical state of being. There's some people that think that they need something physically just to get by, just to exist, just to have that state of mental clarity, to have that state of physical feeling good, or whatever you may want to feel it, physical fulfillment, not feel it, but whatever you may want to call it, and in order to able to be feeling good, like it said in the emotional state of being, and for them to even have a sort of spiritual state of being, or to be able to be tapped into that spiritual state of being, some perceive that they may need substance. And I'm telling you that that is not the case, and I have found that that is not the case. So if anyone wants to know that, oh, I need to have this in order to be spiritual, I need to have this in order to be emotionally fulfilled, I need to have this in order to be physically fulfilled, I need to have this in order to be mentally fulfilled, nothing could be further from the truth, because all you need is you. Because before you even use that stuff, you were in your own space, and you were you yourself fully, not depending on any substance, not depending on anything external to you in order to continue to exist as yourself. So when it comes to physically, you can find that you're better off. You may find that you're better off without the substance. You may find that you're much more stronger physically when it comes to that substance going without. And when it comes to, you may find out that now a lot of things that you go through physically, person, place, or things, or actions that you have to do on the daily basis, you find as if you can get through them much easier when it comes to physically. Now that you're not depending on a substance, you can find that I'm not needing the substance to get me through the day. I'm not depending on the substance to get me through the day. I'm not depending on the substance to help me interact with some person. I'm not depending on the substance for me to communicate with somebody. I'm not depending on the substance for me to be in a certain place. I'm not depending on the substance for me to get to a certain place. I'm not depending on the substance for me to achieve a certain thing. I'm not depending on the substance for me to be able to work with some specific thing. Realizing that without the substance and living substance free, your physical state of being can now flourish, and it can now be in abundance of your own energy and not depending on something outside of you and developing that energy from that thing. Of course, like I've said, you can now use a perspective and gain the perspective of, okay, there's something in my path that I really do. You may think you need, you may think you want, you may think that it has to happen. Whatever that may be when it comes to substance use, if you're looking at it through that lens, then let's dial back, let's detach from it physically, and let's learn, okay, how can we actually apply moderation? If it's something that you can't shake, it's something that you can't get rid of when it comes to physically, then let's dial it back, let's detach from that substance, and let's gain that perspective, let's gain that wisdom, gain that knowledge to be able to do that action more smart, to do that action when it comes to benefiting the mental state of being, benefiting the state of being physically, benefiting the state emotionally and spiritually. Sometimes in life, there's sacrifices that have to be made. You may have to sacrifice a certain thing, like validating a substance or justifying a substance because it helps you in order to get to a certain space. It helps you to get in order to do a certain action, whatever that may be. First of all, detach from that substance and dial it back and be able to say, okay, I'll possibly use this substance. I may or may not use this substance, but at the end of the day, let's make sure that we are not dependent on that substance, that we are not absolutely rooted in that substance and not able to move forward when it comes to going without that substance. So physically detaching from that substance can be beneficial to you. And I empower at each and every one of you, if you're watching this, to continue on that path when it comes to anything you're going through on your path. I'll tell you now, the space that I'm in, I have reached, even though prior to quitting nicotine, prior to quitting smoking weed, prior to quitting drinking all the time, prior to quitting my actions, let's say, of partying, whatever it may be, negative actions, whatever that may consist of, prior to doing that, I viewed it as that's a mental challenge. I viewed it as that's a physical challenge. I viewed that as that's emotionally challenging. I viewed that as, damn, I'm being spiritually tested and spiritually challenged in order to move on, in order to grow, in order to improve, in order to expand in this life that I am in. So if you think any of those things like it's not possible, I'm telling you right now, and I'm a testimony to tell you that it is. And I'm a testimony to tell you that I'm continuously going on my path, substance-free, regardless of what's going on, regardless of what I see mentally, regardless of what I'm thinking when it comes to mentally, regardless of what I see physically, regardless of what's going on about how I feel when it comes to emotionally, regardless of where I am at my life and my spiritual path in life. I'm continuously pushing forward regardless of what I'm going through, and I'm going to continuously do that. So if I can say one thing when it comes to that, is that you can do it, and that if you don't believe you can do it, that's not true. You can do it. You put your mind to it. You put the physical work in that needs to be done. You put one step in after another. You are in the right emotional state of being. You're valuing the way that you feel in a way where you value your intuition. You value how you feel about certain things. And you're valuing your spiritual path in life. You're valuing putting things forward in order for you to have the best spiritual existence, in order for you to have the best spiritual experiences in this life. When it comes to emotionally existing substance-free, you'll have that emotional sense of freedom. You'll be able to come out into, let's say, nature, come out into life, and be able to just have a good experience, be able to have good, high vibration, high frequency of emotional state of being, and exist in that emotional state of being, rather than being in some sort of patternistic action or patternistic behavior that, sure, it makes you feel good, your emotional state of being feels good in the short term, but actually in the long term you stay bound to that substance, you stay emotionally dependent on that substance, which at the end of the day and in long term is not necessarily going to benefit your emotional state of being, because that's going to usher in emotional states of being like guilt. It may usher in emotional states of being of shame or regret or whatever that may be, just self-afflicting or despising self when it comes to how you feel about yourself. So I can tell you now that emotionally, since I have stopped using substances, since I have gone substance free. Of course, I'm talking about substances that are not right for self, substances that are possibly damaging mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I still will, you can call protein powder a substance. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about stuff that is detrimental to your health, detrimental to one's well-being. Going without that, so far I've been able to be, regardless of so-called physical withdrawal symptoms, emotional withdrawal symptoms, your spiritual attachment to those previous actions and your inability to move forward and or that resistance, I've been able to continuously feel good about the path that I'm on, even if I have mental stress, mental challenges from going without substance. I've been able to continuously push forward and continuously stay motivated on this path, regardless of anything that I've been going through, regardless of anything that I've been dealing with. I've been able to consistently move forward and move forward with strength, move forward and move forward with power, move forward and move forward with conviction in this life. And that has been definitely improved by the emotional state of being, because I'm able to exist now having those high emotions, having those emotions of I'm doing the right thing, I'm valuing my physical state of being, I'm valuing my mental state of being, I'm putting my spiritual state of being in a place where it is in a place of value. Therefore, my emotional states of being is reflecting only things that are right for me, only things and emotions that are right for me. Of course, when something happens, something challenging has happened, I'm able to be that much stronger when it comes to emotionally. I'm able to attack it that much better when it comes to emotionally, and emotionally deal with it right there, right in that instance, and not sweep something under the rug. Not say, oh, I'm going to deal with that later. Not say, oh, that's something challenging emotionally I don't want to deal with now. No, my emotional state of being is able to process that in a mere instant. And that clairvoyance that you express and that you exist in when it comes to emotionally can be achieved by going substance free. It can be achieved in that way. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, everyone should go substance free. No one should have substance use. No one should be using substance. I'm telling you that this is something that you can do. If this is something that interests you, and this is why I'm making this video, is because someone out there is going to find this, is this is going to help them, whether that be mentally. This could help someone physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And how do I know that? Because it's helping me when it comes to mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. It's improving my state of well-being when it comes to those aspects. And if it's improving me, I know that someone out there could possibly relate to that. Someone out there could possibly gain some sort of perspective from what I am teaching, perspective from what I am learning from my experiences, and I am putting out onto this platform. And so show support, because I'm supporting people regardless of what I see, regardless of what's happening mentally, regardless of what I see manifesting, or whatever you want to call it, physically, regardless of how I feel about my progress and whatnot, regardless of if I feel as if I'm spiritually being held back or not. I'm going to consistently push forward regardless of what that looks like, regardless of what that may be, and you should do the same. It's great out here. The seasons are changing. Everything has been cooling down ever since, I'd say, a couple weeks ago. We're going to continuously, the weather's going to keep cooling down while we move into the winter, and things are changing. There's nothing more constant than change. And if you're staying the same, then the things around you, not just the things around you, but not necessarily that your mental state of being, your physical state of being, your emotional and spiritual state of being are going to benefit from you staying the same. If change is a constant thing, then why aren't you going to change? Why don't you actually break out of those bounds that you are in and be able to change for the better? And when it comes to spiritually, okay, what is it like when it comes to spiritually living substance-free? Well, you don't have some sort of unsureness, some sort of confusion when it comes to, I'm going to be able to exist for this amount of time. There's nothing physically damaging me that I think, oh, spiritually, I'm going to perish from this realm. Spiritually, I'm going to fade away from this realm. Spiritually, I'm going to be lacking from this realm. Spiritually, I'm going to be in any sort of energy when it comes to that, or any sort of being held back when it comes to spiritually, because from this point on, from the point on that I stopped using, I'm going to continue to push forward, no matter if that's substance free, no matter if that's with substance. All right, I'm just telling you that now I can value myself much more when it comes to my spiritual value. I can be on my spiritual path without having anything holding me back. Of course, with substance previously, I was still able to do these things. I was still able to be in a state of spiritual well-being, but I'm just saying, I had to show myself that, and I had to show that I could do it myself, therefore other people can do the same thing. And that's showing, okay, that's that spiritual power that you have gained. That's that spiritual awareness that you have gained in order to know this is the right thing for me mentally. This is the right thing for me physically. This is the right thing for me emotionally. Even having the perspective of these states of beings has been reached and has been, only reached, not only, but at the end of the day, spiritual state of being comes first. My spiritual senses, my spiritual system, my spiritual sense of well-being, my spiritual sense in general is what has me able to teach about the physical, able to teach about the mental, able to teach about the physical state of being. Therefore, taking everything together, and at the end of the day, we're in a spiritual existence. And even though we're in a physical realm, we are experiencing things spiritually. I'm able to tie that in, and I'm able to have that perspective. And what going substance free has helped me with is knowing that everything's all good. Being able to experience in the present moment spiritually and not feel like I'm being spiritually held back. And I'm going to continue on pushing forward. You guys are going to see I'm going to be coming out with more and more videos talking about more and more topics, not just about substance use, but all sorts of things when it comes to spiritually. I'm going to be teaching when it comes to mentally, teaching emotionally, physically, and spiritually, because that's my calling. That is my path. And regardless of what I'm dealing with, regardless of what I have to deal with when it comes to mentally, regardless what I deal with, regardless what I have to deal with when it comes to physically, regardless what I'm dealing with, regardless what I have to deal with when it comes to emotionally, I'm going to spiritually move forward, and I'm going to spiritually maintain my power, because at the end of the day, I'm a spiritual being, and I am strong as I know I am, and I'm going to continuously push on. Spiritually, I'm going to continuously grow. I'm going to continuously expand when it comes to spiritually, and that's it for this video. I'm out.